All right. Well, hello, people of the world, and welcome to my channel, Sir Cools a Lot. So today I am presenting to you an exciting video on a new trip that I took to Switzerland recently. This trip was about 3 weeks long. So I already previously made a video about a trip to Switzerland, but this trip has a bunch of new stuff that I wanted to share. So let me jump in and tell you all about this. So as you probably know from some of my previous videos, I'm a pretty big fan of the 4-all-family Voyager cooler system. It does a great job of maintaining that 36 to 46 Fahrenheit continuously that I really like. So I've been using it a lot. Because the 4-all-family Voyager can only hold two of the injector pens that I need for this trip, which was 3 weeks, I actually needed an additional cooling system to carry a third pen. And so, as you know from my videos, I played around with a bunch of different stuff, and I decided to try my luck with a live trip with the DISONCARE 74H 7-pen large cooler system that I had previously tested, that I had really good results with. So what's different between the 4-all-family Voyager and the DISONCARE 74H cooler system is that the DISONCARE is a gel pack based system. It doesn't use active cooling like the 4-all-family. So let me jump on in and tell you more about the journey and what I did. Alright, so obviously you've heard all about my disclaimers. I'm independent. All my data is my personal data. I'm on a personal quest to find the best travel coolers for transporting my medicine for my travel needs. So no sponsorship whatsoever. This is just me and my thoughts. So for this trip, just a quick overview of the layout of the trip. So I started off in the Bay Area, California. I got a taxi to the airport, to South San Fransisco Airport. I then flew to London Heathrow. I spent a few hours at London Heathrow, then took a connection flight from London Heathrow to Basel Mulhouse Airport, which is basically in Basel, Switzerland, and then from there grabbed a taxi to the hotel. In this case, I stayed at the Marriott Hotel in Basel for the totality of the trip. So that's the quick sort of layout. I've already previously made some videos on my setup for the 4-all-family Voyager. As you know from my previous videos, I've made quite a few kind of updates and customizations to this travel kit to make it optimized for my travel needs. So feel free to check out my other videos for all the details on this. The new thing for today is in regards to the DISONCARE 74H and how I approach the travel setup for this. So obviously these photos kind of look a little bit shabby, but trust me, I actually did do quite a bit of experimental work on this setup before the trip to make sure that it did exactly what I needed. So really, the way I set up the medicine cooler kit for this trip is quite simple, really. The auto injector pen, I wrap that in essentially kitchen towel tissue, nothing very complicated, and it's just a small piece, and I wrap that tissue around the pen twice, and then I place that pen with the wrapped tissue in a Ziploc bag, and then that's basically ready to go. The gel pack, of course. So in these photos here, nothing is cool. This is just for illustration purposes. When I'm actually doing this as a live trip, and the medicine is live and not yet used, everything here, the towel, the paper towel, the Ziploc bag, everything is placed in the fridge overnight to bring it down to the core temperature, and then of course the gel pack is placed in the freezer for about 24 hours. And so when it comes time to assembling all of this, I'll take the gel pack out of the freezer, I'll run that under a hot water tap for about 3 minutes, and then basically I'm ready to go with packing everything up as it sort of looks here. Also in this travel kit I include a Tempify sensor to kind of keep constant monitoring of the temperature, and I actually also wrap that in a paper towel as well. The purpose of the paper towel is to really just give a little bit of a buffer zone between the ice pack and the live product. You don't want your product to touch the gel pack directly, because the gel pack's obviously very cold, essentially frozen. It's at freezer temperature, and so you want to keep a little bit of a sort of a thermal barrier between your product and the gel pack. So anyway, so this is the basic setup for the DISONCARE for this trip and how it looks. So let's keep going. This I already explained before. How do I prepare for a trip? What am I doing just beforehand? So for the all family, all of the pieces are basically placed in the fridge overnight. I bring everything down to refrigeration temperature, and then about 2 hours before the trip starts, I take everything out of the fridge, I assemble everything, and I turn on the for all family Voyager cooling system. With the little Tempi Wi-Fi temperature probe, I'll make sure the temperature is all at the right temperature. And then after, I kind of spend about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, just making sure everything's stable. And then I will then also add the live medicine into the container in preparation for the trip. On the right there, you can also see the app that I'm using. So the Tempify sensors, they connect to my phone by a little Bluetooth app, which I really like, and so I can continuously monitor and see the temperature of the container. I've already kind of explained most of the story around how I set up the DISONCARE already. Maybe just a recap. So everything, all the pieces, all the component pieces were placed in the fridge the night before, including all of my packing, except for the gel pack that was in the freezer. And then about 2 hours before the start of the trip, I basically packed everything up, noting that I put the gel pack under hot water for about 2-3 minutes beforehand to create a little bit of a thermal phase layer that's a little bit warmer, so you don't have the cold ice directly on the surface of the gel pack. Now, one thing that's interesting about this trip was I actually checked the DISONCARE 74H cooler system into my checked luggage. And so here you can see what my checked luggage was. It's kind of a big blue bag. I'm very paranoid about zips breaking, so it has 2 straps wrapped around it. But you might find this to be quite interesting as I tell you about my story. So the for all family came with me in the cabin, and the DISONCARE 74H went in the checked luggage, so it went into the cargo. So let me keep going with my story. So for this particular trip, I was using British Airways. I had a Club World ticket, so kind of business class. So for the start of the journey, I went to the SFO airport, I went through security, and then I went and hung out at the British Airways Club Lounge for a little while, and all of this was pretty uneventful. There's a lot of plugs around the Club Lounge, so it's super easy just to find a spot and basically, plug yourself in to keep the battery charge up. And then, as I mentioned, the DISONCARE, I checked that into my checked luggage, so that went on the plane cargo. So let's take a look and see what happened. This here is just a little seat map if you're curious. So the flight from SFO to London Heathrow was an A380. So that's quite a big plane. I was sitting on the upper deck, and I think my seat number was like 56J or something, so kind of towards the front of the upper deck. And then the plane from London Heathrow to Basel was a smaller A320, and I was sitting towards the front in row 2D. And actually on the way back, if you're curious, I had exactly the same seat set up, and so there's some kind of stock pictures of the seats, but I have some better pictures later on that I'm going to show you. Okay, so here's me on the British Airways flight. So this is a Club World seat, so it's a pretty comfortable seat. And in the previous video, I was not able to show you how the For All family looked and fitted in relation to the drawer and the seat that you get. And so for the first time, I'm actually able to show you some actual pictures of the For All family and how it looks. So I was really quite zoned in on the drawer that you get with your seat, and interestingly enough, it perfectly fits the For All family Voyager when you lie it down on its side. So this was super handy for the sort of the takeoff and landing where you had to kind of tuck things away. And then during the flight, I actually mostly just left the drawer open and left the For All family Voyagers just sort of sitting there in that sort of half open drawer. The reason for this is hopefully fairly obvious: heat. So you don't want the cooling unit to overheat in that sort of tight drawer. You want a sort of nice ventilation, and so that's the reason that you want to sort of make sure that the cooling vents there are free to circulate kind of air. But all in all, that was basically it. There's a nice little power supply right next to the drawer, and that just basically kept things going throughout the entire flight. Hopefully you like that little video on the side there as well, which I can activate. So here's kind of a little bit of a three-dimensional view there, in case you kind of get sick of just seeing the pictures. So there you go. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So then obviously I arrived at London Heathrow. This was pretty uneventful as well. I went through the security screen that they have at the airport on arrival. There was no issues. I went and hung out at the British Airways lounge in Terminal 5, and then here you can kind of see some fun pictures of some little pies that I was eating, and then of course you can kind of see that I was using one of the kind of the computer desk stations to plug the For All family Voyager in while I was waiting for my next flight. So then for the flight from London Heathrow to Basel, so the last time I did this, I was actually putting the For All family Voyager under the chair. What I discovered was a better way to do this, and so in the Club Europe cabins for British Airways, when you're flying between different European cities and you're in the Club Europe cabin, the chair in the middle is not occupied by a passenger. There's kind of a table that's placed where the chair is. And so actually what I realized was you could use the little net on the chair in front of you. There's like a little pocket net on the chair in front of you to just basically have your For All family Voyager kind of sit there nice and tidy for the journey. And so there's a little picture of that. That's basically what I did, and there were issues, easy peasy. And you can also see the plug there to the left side, which was an easy kind of wire reach of the cooling unit. Cool. So let's keep going. So then of course I arrive at Basel Airport. Pretty uneventful. This time I was picking up some Czech luggage that happened to also have the DISONCARE cooler, which I was very keen to get to take a look at when I get to the hotel later on and see how it did. And I was a little bit nervous because it was carrying live medicine. This was no longer a test, this was the real thing. So I was kind of hoping that it was going to work out. So let's look at some data. So here's the data from the 4 family Voyager. So basically, you know, as you can see, from the point where it was packed for the trip, throughout, you know, all of the different flights and the landings and the connections and all the way to the hotel, it maintained a, you know, a continuous temperature of below 46 Fahrenheit, which is awesome, and just what I was expecting based on all my previous trip experience. What's now more interesting is what happened with the DISONCARE 74H cooler system. So here it is. So very similarly, after it had been packed, you know, there's kind of a little blip above the 46 Fahrenheit while I was packing it and stuff. But basically, after I'd packed it and I started my trip, throughout the flights and the connection flights and the hanging out at the airport, the unit also successfully maintained a continuous temperature below 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, the temperature profile here is very intriguing. You can kind of see that the unit was slowly kind of cooling down a little bit more and more and more from its refrigerated temperature to somehow equilibrating with the ice cold gel pack that was at freezer temperature. And then at some point a little further along into its journey, you can kind of see that it was starting to warm up a little bit more. Very interesting to kind of see how all that kind of looked in real time, and I was very happy to see this graph because I was very nervous about the live medicine that I was transporting. So let's keep going. Arriving at the Marriott Hotel, I've kind of reported most of this before already. The Marriott Hotel has a nice fridge that stays around just below 46 Fahrenheit, which is almost perfect for short-term medicine storage. So I used that fridge like before. Maybe the new addition was actually, I mentioned that with a lot of the hotels in Europe, they like to have this card by the front of your room door that activates the power, the electricity to the room. And then when you leave the room and you remove your card, the electricity goes off. And so one of the challenges here is if you're plugging something into a wall like a cooler, the power will go off and you get switched to battery. And so you need this card to sit in the card slot to keep your power going. So actually what I discovered is the hotels can actually provide you with blank cards instead of your actual room key if you have a special reason, which I do, which is to have a medicine cooler in my room. And so so I was actually, there's a little picture of these blank cards that I was able to get to put my to basically keep the power to the room continuously on, which is cool. And then the other addition was I made myself a little sign here that was both in English and in German to say, please do not remove this card because there is a medicine cooler in the room. And so I placed one of the signs right next to the card, the key card at the front of the room. And then I also placed another one of these little signs right by the plug, which I was using for the medicine cooler. The other piece of interesting information was during the storage of the medicine, I kept the 4 family Voyager in the fridge. The total unit I placed in the fridge. And the thought process here was that because I liked how controlled the 4 family Voyager is with temperature cooling, if I placed the whole unit in the fridge still powered on, because the fridge gives a cold ambient temperature, it would lower the strain on the 4 family Voyager cooling system. Because my plan here was to have this thing running for about 3 weeks continuously. And then of course my first dose was going to be with the medicine that was in the DISONCARE 74H 74H cooling system. But I just placed the whole unit of that in the fridge as well. I figured, why not just let that sit there at the cold temperature rather than messing with it. Alright, so let's keep going. This is just a quick peek at the temp sensor that I placed in the For All Family Voyager for the duration of my hotel stay. Actually, there was a massive amount of data, so this is just kind of a snapshot. What I did here was I grabbed the data from just a little bit before I opened the For All Family Voyager to get my dose 2, and then when I opened it again to get my dose 3. And so you can see there's a little temperature blip there where I'm basically taking a dose out of the unit, but beyond that you can see that for that that total week that passed between dose 2 and dose 3, the temperature was continuously below 46 Fahrenheit, which is super cool. Actually, in retrospect, I realized that I'd made a mistake with my dosing schedule, and I think I ended up taking my dose on day 8 instead of day 7 because of the way my app was notifying me of my when I should take my medicine, and I forgot to change the time zone. So, whoops. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's not the point of this video. Cool. So now I'm gonna share a little bit about the return journey. So I did a few things with the return journey as well because I wanted to get the most data out of this trip as possible. So what I did here for the return journey is, for the For All Family Voyager, I traveled with the unit in my cabin luggage, and it was active throughout the entire trip. So I didn't have live medicine on my return journey, but I did decide to kind of simulate what would happen if you did have live medicine. So the injector pens that were in the For All Family unit had been used, but they were in position, and so I collected that data. At the Basel airport, basically there is this sort of club lounge you can hang out at just after you check in, and so there's just a couple of pictures of that so you can kind of see what that looks like. And again, they have plugs everywhere to kind of top up your battery charge, which is kind of cool. And then on the flight from Basel to London Heathrow, I placed the For All Family Voyager under the chair instead of using that netting that's on the seat in front of you. So just maybe a note about that. The DISONCARE cooler, I actually checked that into my checked luggage again, but the difference this time was there wasn't a frozen ice pack. It was just the cooler at ambient temperature, and I was curious to see how stable the temperature would be on the return journey if it was just the DISONCARE cooler by itself with no active ice pack. Here are some cool pictures. So here I am at London Heathrow. I'm waiting I'm actually just basically queuing to board here on the A380. You can kind of see a nice picture of it here. And then again, I used the little drawer that you get at your chair to sort of keep the For All Family Voyager in position. And then finally, you can see a little picture here of me at South San Fransisco Airport, waiting for my checked bag to arrive. So let's take a look at some data. So here's the For All Family Voyager on the return journey. So again, incredible temperature profile. There is one little blip that I do want to mention, and there was a special reason for this. So after I'd arrived at London Heathrow, I had noticed that my For All Family Voyager was rattling a little bit. And it occurred to me that the temperature probe had slipped out of place. It's normally lodged into the inner aluminium tube that the 4-all family Voyager has as part of its cooling mechanism. And the little temperature probe, it's sort of slipped out a bit, and it was rattling at the bottom of the container. So actually I opened it and I repositioned the probe where I wanted it to be, but unfortunately that resulted in a slight blip in the temperature profile because it detected the heat of my hands and stuff kind of touching it. And so just a heads up, that's why that little temperature blip is showing on this data set. On the plus side, at least you can see how precise and how accurate that temperature probe is at detecting any anomalies with the temperature. So I guess that's like a positive control, depending on what you want to call that. And then, of course, there is the DISONCARE 74H that went into was checked luggage and went via all the cargo hold. So as I mentioned on the way back, I did not use ice pack or medicine. I simply placed the DISONCARE 74H in my checked luggage, and I placed a temperature probe inside it to monitor the temperature during the journey. And so this is what it looks like. Basically, it kind of hovered around the 65 Fahrenheit mark for most of the journey. And as it went on, and as I went on to the international flight from London Heathrow, you can see the temperature profile fall a little bit there down into the 60s, but really it was a very sort of stable, comfortable environment to be in a temperature cooler in checked luggage. And so I just thought this was very interesting data to see. I always had this fear that somehow the cargo hold was like sub-zero, freezing kinds of temperatures and other things like that, but apparently it's quite a comfortable environment to be in a British Airways cargo hold. So something to think about. So this is really it. That's all I have for today. So just basically reporting out on this recent trip that I took. So hopefully you found the additional notes around the 4-all family Voyager system interesting. Here this cooling system's now been on multiple trips and each of those trips are multiple weeks, and it's doing incredibly well. And then now this time I've also added the DISONCARE 74H to my live travel experiences. So both of these coolers are super impressive. Of course, the DISONCARE has a gel pack, so it isn't continuous and perpetual. It only lasts for a period of time. I had done some previous testing, and it seemed to be able to comfortably go to about 30 to 50 hours of maintaining below 46 Fahrenheit. This trip to Basel took about 20 hours, and it was very comfortable during that period. And so that's all I have for today. I hope you found some of this interesting for your travel planning needs, and that's all I have. Wishing you a wonderful day.